Well, thank you everybody for joining us for our we call a double header for today. Right now, today we're having our social digital media workshop followed by our purposeful aging workshop through the power of Zoom without traveling. We're able to do two events in one day. So thank you so much for being here today. My name is Tom Soon. I'm the Director of Outreach and Elections for the Department of Labor Empowerment. And that without any further ado, I want to just introduce to you our general manager to say a few words, our general manager, Raquel Beltran. And just let you know that I apologize, before I bring Raquel aboard, in terms of Q&A, we're going to go through the whole entire presentation first, and then we'll do Q&A afterwards. And that will be done by the raising of the hand function. And when that time happens, we'll give further instruction. So thank you so much. Apologize. So Raquel, please take it away. Thank you.
No need to apologize, Tom. Thank you very much. This is kind of an exciting project for us and an opportunity for us to work with all of you around digital and social media. We've been actually we're very excited about this particular workshop, and I would have to say I think the whole department was excited. We have several members of the staff who are joining us today. Thank you, Tom, our Director of Outreach and Elections for the department. Thank you. Also, we're joined by other directors in the department. Julian Onteline, our Director of Innovation in the Office of Community Engagement, Director Mike Fong, who is the Director of Policy and Government for the department, and also our Director of Luis has joined us. So this is kind of almost the entire leadership team has joined for this particular workshop. We're also joined by other members of the staff that I'd like to thank for squeezing this into their calendar and to support this effort. One is I'd like to recognize Freddie Kupin-Ams, Neighborhood Empowerment Advocate. Also, another NEA is Jose Galdames. Betty is also joining us today, right? I think I saw her name in here. Yes, Betty is joining us, and Grace Kim, who works in the Division of Innovation in the Office of Community Engagement. Glad to have you joining us, Grace. We also have Betty, yes, Betty Wong Oyama. Thanks, Betty, also an NEA. Also joining us as part of the staff to give support is Guadalupe Aguilar, part of the Administrative Division, works on ENS NC support. It's kind of important as part of the kind of anchor hub work in the Division of Administration, trying to keep us all from not getting in trouble most of the time. John Darnell, NEA, but also our Chief Emergency Preparedness Officer, and is also leading our effort at 7 p.m. today with our Purposeful Aging webinar this evening. Thank you, John, for making time to bounce back and forth between the two meetings. Glad to have you able to kind of do that. It's wonderful that Zoom can allow us to do that kind of work. This is actually the timing for this webinar and workshop is really great because, as you know, we've introduced to the Commission, the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, a digital media policy that will be circulated, is circulating. It'll be circulating until January, and we'll see what final language is decided to be approved. So it's good to have this at the same time that we're thinking about social and digital, the digital and social media environment in which the neighborhood council system functions. Very, very honored that we have Anne-Marie Holman, our Public Information Officer, leading the work in the department. Anne-Marie comes with a tremendous amount of experience. She's very skilled not only in the area of communications and public information work, but she also has a good understanding of the neighborhood council system and embraces that experience, brings that experience to everything that she does. Also represents the department in the citywide, what started out as the pandemic COVID-19 meeting of public information officers in the city of Los Angeles. That has been extremely helpful. She acts as a bridge between the department and other city departments in order to try to help them communicate with you and with the public in ways that make sense. It doesn't sound like bureaucratic gobbledygook. So she's always talking about real words for real people and is very, very skilled at that. So I'm very honored that she's part of our team in leading our effort. this evening. So thank you very much, Tom. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. I'll be staying on as long as I can, and hopefully we'll be available for Q&A as well. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Raquel. And then I forgot to mention a really important thing is that congratulations to our world champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. Go Dodgers. So without further ado, I do want to turn this time over. And we do have a couple more staff coming in, Karen Hernandez and Erica Cruz as well. But without further ado, let's turn this time over to Anne-Marie Holman. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Anne-Marie Holman. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I'm also a former Neighborhood Council member myself. I used to be the chair of the Land Use Committee for the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, and I'm now a Sherman Oaks resident. So I've been fortunate to work with neighborhood councils all over. I also did outreach for the Congress of Neighborhoods event for a number of years too. So I'm very familiar with that event, and I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces here tonight. I really appreciate you joining me. I want to let you know before we get started that we have a few opportunities coming up for you to get further engaged with the topics that I'm going to cover tonight. I'm going to put up a slideshow in a moment and go through those opportunities with you, but I want to underscore that tonight we're going to be doing a general purpose overview of a lot of different topics, like about 25 of them or so, so hang tight. But I will have time for questions later. I will be available here until the Purposeful Aging Town Hall starts at 7, if you're able to stay. And you will also have the opportunity to follow up with both Tom and I individually with your questions. And I'll also be sending out a packet next week that goes into a lot of depth about some of the topics that we're going to be covering pretty quickly tonight. Among the things that that packet will contain are guides for using Nextdoor as a neighborhood council, using your Canva Pro account, which each neighborhood council has, and doing things like every door direct mail. So let me put up this slideshow and get started. Oops. There we go. There we are. So first of all, to just cover the feedback and learning opportunities that I was talking about. First up, we've got one-on-one elections outreach strategy sessions coming. 91 of our 99 neighborhood councils are going to be participating in the 2021 neighborhood council election season. The first round of candidate enrollment opens on November 13th in the Hollywood area, and then new rounds of candidate enrollment open, and with the last, I believe, of the 12 regions opening on February 13th. So between now and then, Tom and I are going to sit down with each neighborhood council who's having an election and your NEA to talk in depth about election strategy for you. So those one-on-one elections outreach strategy sessions you see at the top, we're booking those already. We're meeting with 4 of the neighborhood councils in Central City and in the Hollywood area starting tomorrow. So if you have specific questions about how to use the different tools or how to undertake some of the tips that are mentioned in tonight's class, please feel free to bring those to your session. Also, we'll be able to talk in depth about things like direct mail and how that would deploy in your specific neighborhood. So please keep that in mind. Another thing is that we have a webinar like this one coming up on public relations and media relations for neighborhood councils, so you can learn how to more effectively communicate with different types of stakeholders within your boundaries, as well as build good relationships with the media. And we'll also train you on how to manage a crisis, a public relations crisis, as well as how to handle hard questions from the media. Finally, there are going to be 3 different discussion opportunities for the draft digital media policy that many of you have seen. which has come out from the Neighborhood Council Advice Division of the City Attorney. Now, this has had 2 brief discussions already at the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners meeting. We're going to be doing a full presentation on it on Monday, November 16th at 1 p.m. And we're also going to be doing a workshop in December and another one in January, because we believe that that discussion is going to be continuing to take place and the policy will continue to evolve and take shape until at least January, if not later. I'll talk to you a little bit more about what underlies the digital media policy, but before I launch into that, I'd like to turn the screen over to Julian Untitled, who's our Director of Innovation at Empower LA, because he's going to share a quick preview of a new data tool that's coming that we'll be using to help shape your elections outreach strategy. So Julian, if you'd like to take it away.
Hi everybody. Yes, hello. Let me share my screen first. Well, I think you can see now the our website. Can you see it? Can you see my screen? Yes. So just to help you finding the tool that I will present tonight, it's kind of easy. You go on empowerla.org/data, or if you go on empowerla.org, just click on data here, and a little bit you go down, and you will see the Know Your Community section, and you just click on here, and you have access to this new tool that I will talk very quickly about. The Know Your Community is a gathering of different tools that have been created recently in partnership with the Mayor's Office and Esri, the company that provides the software, the geographical system that we use. And there's different tools that are available. So really, I invite you to have a look. I try to introduce them little by little in the monthly profile. Maybe the one that we can have a look quickly today is the Demographic Explorer. The Demographic Explorer will give you a lot of information about your community, and the presentation is made by Neighborhood Council. So you will need to create an account to have access to the tool. It's free. Just follow the process and the flow by clicking on creating an account. If you have any problem creating an account, feel free to reach out. I will be happy to help you. I have already an account, so I can open the app directly. And it's very easy to use. So let's select one neighborhood council. I don't know, let's take United Neighborhoods, for example. And then I can select which infographic I want to see. So you can see that there's different infographics available. So let's look at, for example, the demographic profile, and I just run the infographics. And it will make the different calculus, because it keeps using the last updated information. And of course, today it's a bit longer than usually because we're doing a demonstration. There we go. So for United Neighborhoods, we have here different information regarding the demographics. So you can see information about education, information about employment, some different key facts about the number of households, the total population, the median age, the median income, and you can see the distribution of household income. And for each of the feature, most of the time you can click on it and you will have additional information. So if you click on the median household income, I don't know if you can see it well because it's written very small, you can see the percentage of each of these households according to different range. And you can compare to LA County, or you can compare to California, or you can compare to the entire country. So you can that way compare your neighborhood council with a bigger picture. So that was just the infographics for the demographic profile. You can select here directly the other demographics. So for example, these days, unfortunately, we talk a lot about coronavirus. So we have developed a dedicated template for that. And while I made the calculus, I want to inform you that all the information that I displayed are you can export this information in PDF format or as an image and integrate them to your website if you want to, or you can share it with your stakeholder during meeting. So just in that case, coronavirus impact planning report, you can see the different information about the population at risk regarding the coronavirus, the number of the information about health insurance coverage, which can be interesting in that case. There is sometimes the template fits on 2 pages, so you have an additional pages where you have even more information. So I won't go through all the information because I have only a few minutes and I don't want to take more time. But just I really invite you to visit that new tool, Demographic Explorer. It's part of the Know Your Community platform. If you have any question regarding these tools, feel free to reach out to me. I will be very happy to help you or to provide the feedback to the people we develop with if you have great idea. I think that I used all my time, and if you have questions, I am of course available. It can be after that meeting by email if you want to. And Mary?
Thank you so much, Julian. So here we go. I told you that we were going to talk a little bit more in depth about the digital media policy because many of you did submit questions for it. And I appreciate those of you who took the time to share your questions before this workshop. You helped me shape the content a great deal. And I will make sure to share that link for questions with everyone who attended the class today in case you didn't get to ask them. Please keep in mind that sometimes I'm going to be addressing your questions in our one-on-one sit-down because it seemed better to do it that way and talk about your specific needs for your specific council. But so if you don't hear the question that you asked me answered during this session, that is why. The social media policy is, it's going to be under review from November until at least January. As I had stated, we're going to have 3 different opportunities to be able to sit down and discuss it together. The first of these is going to be on November 16th. That is a Monday at 1:00 p.m. So it'll be a lunchtime meeting, Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. If you go to our website at empowerla.org/commission, you'll see the information on how to get the agenda for that meeting and how to join. So please join us for our official presentation of the policy there. There will be 2 more workshops scheduled for this policy, one in December, one in January. I'll make sure that you get the dates as soon as they're set. The first thing to keep in mind about this policy is that it is not set in stone. It is still a draft. It is still actively taking shape. So it's important to read it. I'll make sure that the link is in your packet when I send it to you next week. And ask your questions and think about alternatives to some of the solutions that are in that policy that you might want to propose. However, to give a very brief look at the why behind these policy suggestions, here's a couple of points to consider. First, this policy is parallel to the one that's in development for all city employees. So soon everybody who represents the city of Los Angeles will be subject to similar guidelines. Many neighborhood council members who attended the commission meetings on this topic have asked why city employees are not subject to a similar policy. And the answer is that they will be. That is taking shape behind the scenes. It has not yet been released yet, similar to how this policy has not been released yet. A more vital consideration, though, and why this policy is the way it is that the social media accounts of public officials, even if they were originally intended to be personal accounts and not intended to represent the government agency that the individual serves. Personal accounts belonging to public officials can be legally transformed into what is called a limited public forum if that official chooses to use them in a certain way. It does not matter if they have a statement that says the opinions are their own in their bio. It does not matter if it was originally intended to be a personal and private account. It is the way in which you utilize that account, whether it's during service time or after hours, that's where you cross the line. So that what that means is that your account could be subject to a Public Records Act request, or you could lose the ability to delete or block negative comments or people because doing so might violate the First Amendment rights to free speech of the people who are leaving those negative comments, as the public has the right to express their opinion in such a public forum. Now, this is true even if they cuss you out, unfortunately. You can't necessarily block them because obscenities are often legally classed as something called intensifiers. So it's like underlining a word or putting it in boldface. Or if it's, and this is a digital class, you think about somebody that's doing the online equivalent of screaming and typing in all caps. Similarly, obscene language can be classed as an intensifier. Now, we'll talk later on in this class about how to handle negative people later on, but generally speaking, the public forum line is crossed when somebody uses a personal account to engage in government-related business. Now, our goal with this policy is to keep you protected back behind that boundary, as recent federal court decisions have all been leaning this way. This is the trend, and a lot of these cases are still actively open, but even top officials like the president or Congress member Ocasio-Cortez have not been successful in cases where they tried to argue that they had the right to block problematic users. This draft policy also aims to protect you from harassment in other ways. Many of the board members who have commented on the policy so far at the commission meetings have noted that some of these considerations are related to code of conduct type issues, and that's absolutely true. Code of conduct type issues have arisen between members of the same board on social media, for example. So some of the language in this draft policy is targeted toward managing that. We will also talk about more guidelines for interactions on social media, but with regard to this policy, please read it if you haven't already. The link will be shared in your packet. And please keep in mind, like I said, this is not set in stone, so your suggestions are expected, and they are welcome if you join us at one of these 3 upcoming opportunities to discuss and shape this policy. A couple of other opportunities that are coming up. In the survey that I shared for the class, which is listed below here, I asked you to please share your sign-up links with us, because we'd like to include them on the new Empower LA website. Hopefully we can have a page where you can see the sign up for every council, or we might put the sign up link on each neighborhood council's webpage. So please share your link if you haven't yet done so, for how someone can opt in to receive your emails. Another tool that we're offering is help recovering old accounts. In particular, right now, we're working with ITA, which is the Information Technology Agency for the city. They manage all the city social media accounts, and they're also the point people for help from Facebook, for example. If you have lost your Facebook login, ITA has very kindly agreed to help us recover lost pages that neighborhood councils have lost access to because a board member shut down the personal account they set it up with and lost access, or moved out of town and they can't be reached, or something like that. So if you have lost your Facebook page login, let us know. Email your neighborhood council name and the link to the account that you've lost access to by next Friday, November 6th at the end of the day, to feedback@empowerla.org. This slide will also close this slideshow, so don't worry about writing these things down. You'll get a copy of this slideshow along with your packet, but I just wanted to let you know that there are different ways for you to get help with your social media and digital outreach and other outreach questions. If you need help with Canva, for example, Canva Pro is a graphic design tool. It's easy to use, it's intuitive. Even if you have no design experience, you can use templates to create easy to make, easy to share graphics for your neighborhood council to do outreach with. We also have some custom templates for neighborhood council use in your account there. Every neighborhood council has a Canva account and each member is able to share the same login. If you haven't been using yours, please send us an email at Canva, C-A-N-V-A, @empowerla.org so we can get you set up. The same is true for Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a social media platform that many of you use. It's based strictly on residents within a very small micro-targeted area, and it's a really fantastic tool for neighborhood council outreach because when Nextdoor was setting up its LA City environment, they used neighborhood councils as a way of mapping the region so that each neighborhood council was able to have its own dedicated agency level account. In the way that you'll see, if any of you use Nextdoor personally, for example, you'll see posts from like the county supervisors there or from LAFD or your city council member. And that's the kind of post that you'll be able to do as a neighborhood council member. Again, everyone can share the same account. We ask that you give us up to 3 names to serve as your Nextdoor administrators, and please send them to this address, nextdoor@empowerla.org. If you have questions about Zoom, many of you have asked me for your Zoom login because I do so much of the digital support for the department. However, we have a separate tech team that helps support virtual meetings for neighborhood councils. Each neighborhood council has also got a Zoom account under our umbrella, and you're able to get the login or help with your questions by writing to evg@empowerla.org. Now recall that EVG stands for Empowered Virtual Governance. So if you need help with your online meetings, please write to evg@empowerla.org. Finally, if you have questions with for social media, if you want to know about how to do something, a strategy or a technique question, write to me, Anne Marie Holman at lacity.org. There's a hyphen, ANN-marie.holman@lacity.org. You can also save those things for our one-on-one strategy session as Tom and I sit down with each of you in turn. Finally, if you have a question about social media that's conduct related, if somebody's bullying you, if there's an argument between members of your board, please contact your NEA. They may also bring in the Neighborhood Council Advice Division of the City Attorney's team to assist with that, depending on what the issue is. A popular question that I was asked for this class is, how do you measure your success? Do you talk about it in terms of the percentage of your stakeholders that you're able to reach, or is there some other way of measuring your success? The best way to do it is by engagement rate. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on, engagement rate is the key to understanding if you're connecting well with your followers. So you can calculate that pretty easily by dividing the number of likes or reshares you have on a given item by the total number of followers that you have on that platform. Now, there's different stats depending on what platform you're on. If you're on Nextdoor, for example, you'll also have a benchmark called impressions, which is the number of pairs of eyes that have gone past your content. But that may be very different from the number of people who actually stopped to like your post. It doesn't mean that they didn't read it, they just didn't interact with it. So very quickly, in a nutshell, that's the formula for determining engagement. If you have a 10% engagement rate on a social media platform, generally speaking, that's really very good. And on some platforms like Nextdoor, you're not going to hit that number because of how the algorithm works on that particular platform. I'm going to talk about some content management tips and content gathering tips first, because these are things that you're going to need to consider no matter what platform you're using. And I'm also going to talk about accessibility. And then toward the end, I'll give you some individual tips for specific social media platforms. Many of you have asked me, what do I share on our neighborhood council accounts? Now, I realize that the question of what to share is something that's under active discussion as part of the social media policy for neighborhood councils. However, these are the recommendations that I would make at this time. Official news is always a plus. If you have an event to invite people to, if you have a meeting to send out, stories that have a particular impact on your community, coverage of an event or meeting that you had, all of that kind of news is fantastic to share. Shout outs and recognitions are always great, especially in the current times when everyone is struggling. It's really nice to be able to have that engagement and that interaction. So recognizing your NC's achievements, recognizing the achievements of board members, committee members, or of people in similar fields. If a neighboring neighborhood council did something great, give them a shout out. If one of your stakeholders did something cool, give them a shout out. That can really make a big difference and really boost someone's day. And it can also make people feel more interested in your particular account. The key to making good content choices is to make sure that you are giving priority to information that is specific to what you do and specific to your community. I know that there's a temptation to share pieces from major news networks like CNN, but the thing is that kind of national news, your followers are already able to get it from CNN or whatever other network they may be watching, but what they can't get is news about their small community. That narrow focus is something that falls below the radar, or it is too granular for a lot of different media platforms. So that's where you can be the unique source. And as long as you're a unique source, that's what will drive followers to you, and that's what will engage them and keep them coming back. Often you see advice for people that want to become an influencer on Instagram. And this advice is not just good for people that want to take rose-tinted pictures of the latest sweater that they're modeling or whatever it is. The advice is that you should find a niche that nobody else is in, and you should really play to that niche. By playing small, you become big because you're the only person in your field. It seems ironic, but that's really true. By playing small, you get big. And it works just as well for a neighborhood council as it does for another type of social media influencer. And in fact, for you as a neighborhood council, you're really lucky, because what trips up a lot of people that want to become an influencer is they're not sure what their niche is. They don't know what their brand is. For you, it's easy. You're your community's voice at City Hall. Nobody else can serve that role. Nobody else can give the local spin on city news that you do. So, please keep that in mind, that you have this tremendous opportunity to become the local expert and be regarded as it by your followers. Also consider sharing opportunities to join your board. If you hear about jobs or volunteer opportunities or things that are fun, right now, virtual workshops are a really great thing to share. And in fact, that's something that a lot of you have been wanting to share with each other. If you have an event that's virtual that you think might be of interest to other neighborhood council members, let me know. I'll try and help put it in our newsletter or on our social media, or help find some other way to make sure that other NCs that are out of your particular reach with your own platforms and newsletters, that people are able to still hear about them. Finally, things that give a sense of place are nice. Again, this plays to your local expertise. Is there a landmark building? Is there a local tradition? Those kinds of things are really, they're golden for your neighborhood. And again, that will help get people talking. Ask people what their favorite local landmark is. You don't have to come up with the content. You can ask people questions, give them surveys. Those kinds of things, when you ask a question, expecting an answer, that's a great engagement tool too. Many of you asked, how do you work with other neighborhood council members to get your content, and how do you get it in a timely manner? I've had private conversations with many of you where you're worried about getting information on time or getting a complete overview of something from fellow board members, or you feel like you're the one that's juggling everything. The good news is that the whole burden does not have to be on you. Now, when I've taught past versions of this class, or when I've sat down with each of you before for social media consultations, I've talked to you about how to break up the administration of the different accounts. I realize again that that is something that is shifting with the new social media policy, but some tips for breaking up the work for now might be to assign different individuals to do the different social media platforms. As long as you coordinate your content and your graphics beforehand so that your branding is consistent. If somebody has an affinity for Twitter, if somebody's really great at Instagram, let them be that person. You don't have to do every single one. Now, regardless of how you manage the actual administration of the different accounts, amongst yourselves, amongst your board or committee members, here's a couple of suggestions for how you can make sure to gather news that's complete and get it on time to make sure that you can create a strategy that all your board members and committee members will understand how to interface with, and they'll understand what to expect. One suggestion is to create standing agenda items to discuss your content for either your social media or for your newsletters. This can be true for both your board meeting as well as for each committee. Every committee has got to share their news, but not every committee is going to be the person doing your social media posts, doing your blog posts, updating your website, or writing your newsletter. So it's important to create a systematic way for everybody to gather their news and share it. Another tip is to create a checklist for submissions. The event name, the date and time, the link or the phone number to join, the link to RSVP or to view the agenda, graphics or photos or videos or other visual material, a 1 to 2 sentence short description of what's going on. Make sure that the chairs of each committee that you work with that want you to post about their meetings or their events, make sure they give those things to you. Make sure your board gives those things to you. Have them fill out every field. Set up a Google form. Set up a Google form with those fields and let them fill it out. And one of my favorite things is to ask for the hot topic on the agenda. And that's the thing that is going to get the people, well, I was going to say get the people into the room, which is not true right at this moment. That's going to get the people to the meeting. It's going to get them to your Zoom. And I'll talk a little bit more about the hot topic in a minute. Now, finally, set up a calendar for posting. I don't post every day because I have other duties that I need to do as part of my job. You are all doing this work pro bono. You have your jobs, you have your families, you have your lives. You probably can't post every day either, and that's okay. The important thing is to post quality content and to post time-sensitive content in a timely manner. So set up a calendar. A lot of your items are going to be expected items. They're going to be standing things. Every month, those meetings are on the same days of the month, same days of the week. So working backward from what your posting deadlines are for the agendas for those meetings, for example, when would you need to receive those things by so that the time that you are able to post those things on the social falls in between the material being generated and the time that you would need to put that material up in order to make sure that people get it in time. Also give people a deadline for giving you submissions. You're going to need it by Tuesday in order to put it up on Friday. Friday is your posting day, for example. Now, you don't have to pick those days of the week. You don't have to do it as a weekly thing, but find a calendar and a schedule that works for you and for your team that is doing these posts, that is writing the newsletters, that is updating your website, or that works for your web vendor as well, for that matter, if you work with a professional. Speaking of working with a professional, working with one can be a great way to increase your resources and to increase your bandwidth. As a neighborhood council member, you're the expert on your neighborhood, but you don't necessarily need to be an expert on every single outreach platform. So if it makes sense to use part of your budget to hire somebody to help you who is good with that platform, definitely do it. It can really be worthwhile. So I talked a moment ago about the hot topic on an agenda. When somebody tells you that they're going to have a public safety meeting, and one of the things they want to discuss is the fact that there's this corner, this intersection in your neighborhood where there's been 3 pedestrians that have almost been hit by cars in the last month, that's going to be the hot topic. So the hot topic is going to be what you're going to turn into the subject line for your post or for your newsletter story or for your blog post. However, be very aware that subject lines can change the rate at which people take interest in your posts, and it can change the way that they'll open an email, for example. If you're working in a format, so Nextdoor, newsletters, those things will obviously have a true subject line at the top. However, you can even do something translate the subject line into the lead for your post. Like the first sentence, for example, if you're doing something on Facebook or on Instagram or another platform that doesn't really have that separate field for a subject line. Now, look at the difference between these two things. These both describe committee meetings for land use committees, but look at how different the one on the left is from the one on the right. I felt like the axe throwing one definitely creates a sense of urgency, and it makes people wonder what's going on, and they want to check that meeting out and check out the agenda to see what's happening. This is a real subject line, by the way. I believe it's NoHo West, and it was written by Wendy Moore, who does their social media for them. So this is a fabulous subject line. It's one of my favorite neighborhood council meeting post subject lines of all time. And both of these things referred to the same exact meeting, and yet the axe throwing one got far more opens, I guarantee it. Now, one of the reasons why that axe throwing line is so great, besides the fact that it gives you visuals, because you wonder why an axe throwing establishment would even apply for a liquor license as they did. What's great about it is that a planning committee or a land use committee, unless you're a member of a neighborhood council or unless you've engaged with one previously, or you've engaged with other kinds of local government bodies, you may not know what a land use committee really does. So I like that the axe throwing subject line, that's a good example of plain language, actually. Since you're on a neighborhood council board, many of you get emails from government agencies, city departments, other government elected officials. And sometimes you may have noticed that government speak is not the most transparent speak. It can be bureaucratic, it can be full of acronyms, it can be full of specialized vocabulary that doesn't really make sense to the public. The purpose of neighborhood councils and the mission of neighborhood councils and the beauty of neighborhood councils is that you are on the borderline between the public and the government. You're where the transition happens, you're where the translation happens. So using plain language, beginning at the beginning to explain what something is, what a neighborhood council is, what you do, what your meetings are about, how to make a public comment. These kinds of plain language is part of, I would actually go beyond plain language to even say using guideposts, plain language as well as guideposts, including explaining how your meeting works at the top of it. These are all part of being transparent and accessible. And these are the things that will make people feel confident participating in your meetings. These are the things that'll make the difference between someone sitting there silently, a black screen with just their name on it, or someone actually asking questions or deciding to join you for your meetings or even join your board. So having that entree, providing that way in is really important. Another thing is color contrast. Translations, alt text, font size, and screen reader friendly hyperlinks. I'm going to talk to you about each of these things in turn. But first of all, some color choices don't work for some people because they may have color blindness issues, or other people with visual impediments may have a hard time seeing contrast. Contrast is important even for people who do not have visual impairments when you're talking about social media, because it's one of the things that will make a difference when you're reading that small image on your phone, as many of us do when we're on social media. It'll make the lettering pop. The same thing goes for font size. You want to use a really large font size, especially for social media posts. It doesn't matter if every single person is able, that has 20/20 vision that's reading it. On the size that it is on your phone, it's going to be too small to read. So one thing that I like to do whenever I make a social media graphic is I check it out, I send it to myself and check it out on my phone to make sure that I can still read all the important stuff before I go ahead and post it. Now, if you have red-green color blindness, you won't be able to see that this image actually shows the number 7. So this is a good example of a problem with color contrast. You can find many different tools for color contrast accessibility checkers. I like the one at webaim.org, but there are plenty of others. If you just look up accessibility color contrast checker, you can find a tool where you can enter your item and see whether it's working or whether you need to adjust the contrast between the two colors. Translation is a huge part of accessibility, and it's something that we've been very happy to have made some strides on supporting for neighborhood councils in the past year or two. Nowadays, translations are not paid for out of individual NC funds. They're paid for from a fund that's held by the clerk's NC funding division. Now, keep in mind that this fund is still limited. A fund is established each year, and then that money is spent on a first come, first served basis until the funds are gone. There is no other way that they prioritize the requests that they get except in order of which they were received. So please keep that in mind as you work to figure out what translations your stakeholders might need, how translations might help you reach groups in your boundaries that you have not been able to engage with much yet. If you want to request translation for your materials, please send them to ncsupport@lacity.org. That's ncsupport@lacity.org, and we'll be able to assist you with getting your translations made and returned to you. Accessible hyperlinks are also an issue. A screen reader, this is because a screen reader will, this is how they work. When a screen reader opens a web page, it'll scan that web page for the most important items or the items that you can interact with first, and it will pull those up first. So if you have a link, that's going to be one of the things that flags the screen reader. But the problem is that if the link just says click here throughout the document, click here, see here, read it here, God only knows what those things mean. So it's important to use descriptive hyperlinks if you are going to use them. That means that you would hyperlink a phrase that still points to the thing, but which also labels the thing that you're pointing to. So for example, this is the City Council file on Neighborhood Council Reform, City Council file CF18-0467. So you could use something like that, but even better, you may want to use the actual words, City Council file on NC Reform, depending on the audience that you're talking to. But always lean toward the description that will make the most sense to the most people who might be reading your material. Now, the problem with hyperlinks is that even if you make them accessible, and even if you use hyperlinks that are descriptive, you can wind up with a problem when you take your content and try and paste it somewhere else, if you're somebody who not only does the social media, but you also do the newsletter, or you do the social media across all the different channels, this is a problem that you'll run into. A place like Nextdoor or like Facebook can't use hyperlinks. And I've done it before myself, where I wrote a newsletter story, published it in the newsletter with the hyperlinks intact, took the story, pasted it into Nextdoor, forgot to pull out the hyperlinks and make them into real links, and then published it, and then nobody could click through to learn more. But you don't want to use something that's gigantic and sloppy looking as well. Sometimes when you upload a file to your website to be able to share it, for example, it can really have a long, messy link, and that really looks bad. And it's also a disaster to put something like that on Instagram or another place where you're not able to click the link at all. So what you want is to still have real links, but you want them to work for a screen reader. You want them to be trackable, memorable, and even printable, because I've done that too. I've used hyperlinked material on a print one-pager flyer, I printed it out, and then you couldn't use it anymore because I didn't put the link in the actual text. So if you use a custom short link, you can take care of all of those issues at once. My personal favorites are tools like bit.ly, bit.ly, and tiny.cc. I like those two services, and there are others, but I like a service like these two that allows you to choose a custom text for your link. If you use Tiny or bit.ly at random, it'll just generate a bunch of like rubbish. They're not rubbish, but that'll generate a series of random letters. So it's shorter, but if you use something like that on Instagram, whoever is going to be able to remember how to spell that all and the capitalization and everything else to be able to reproduce your link and visit it. So if you can use something that describes what the link is, that's great. But one thing that you need to be able to keep in mind when you use these short link makers is that almost always a short link is going to be case sensitive. So you would need to create, if I created the event tiny.cc/NC events as the event listing through which many of you signed up for this webinar tonight, for example. I also created the all lowercase version and the all capital letter version because those are actually different links on the back end. They all point to the same place, but just in case somebody wrote it down, they didn't have to worry about capitalizing it correctly because they would still wind up where I wanted them to wind up when they used this link. Now, however, I did use the capital NC and lowercase events because that's part of CAMEL case. CAMEL case is another accessibility tool that allows people to read domain names, email addresses, and other things like that more easily. One of the problems that can happen if you don't use CAMEL case is that it can be very, very, very difficult to figure out where the break in the words actually are. For example, this is an excerpt from a real flyer for a program in San Francisco that's run by the city government there. Now, if you use CAMEL case, you're going to use interior capital letters for clarity. So when you read that part that's circled in red, it's hard to keep your eyes from making something else out of it. But if they were to have used CAMEL case for their link, so that it says, it's clear that it says SF Arts Commission, your mind knows where the word breaks go. And it's much, much easier to read. So CAMEL case is your friend. I love using it for hashtags in particular. Here's a few places where you can get free images which you can use without royalties and without having to do a credit. I'm going to send in your packet a series of 3 articles I wrote for our blog a couple years back on intellectual property, because those are going to have detailed instructions on how you can use images or video or other assets that have Creative Commons licenses. Those are the licenses that you see that say CC 3.0 or something like that. Those kinds of Creative Commons assets are free to use without paying royalties. They cannot be used without credit, and the credit has to be written out in a very, very specific way. There's an online format and there's a print format. And so I'll have a copy and paste version of that for you in the packet that I send you, because Creative Commons does have some really incredible assets. That's what you'll find on Wikimedia Commons, for example. However, if you want to find nice free images which you can use without having to do the credit and without paying any royalties, here's 3 places where I recommend finding those things. Unsplash.com, UNSPLASH, is one of my favorites right now. They have really high quality, high resolution images. Pixabay is another source for free images. Both of these websites are searchable by keyword. So you can say that you want to look for something about residents, for example, or community. You can use keywords like that, animals. Another beautiful place to find images is the Library of Congress's Flickr page. If you go to flickr.com, FLICKR.com, and search for the Library of Congress, you'll see their website there. They have incredible historic images available free to use, including some images that are landmark images that I think everyone will recognize. So do check it out. We did use those for that website for historic images to promote the Congress of Neighborhoods a couple of years ago, for example. I wanted to share a couple of management tips for cross-posting and using a dashboard. Now, let me take the dashboard tip first. A dashboard is something like a service like Hootsuite or Sprout Social. There are several different kinds of services for that kind of thing, but these are tools that allow you to have all of your social media accounts viewable on one window or on one dashboard so that you can look across and see what's going on each one. Now, this is a great way to share access without having to have each person who has access to the dashboard be an administrator on each account. It's also a great way to get an overview of what's going on, because social media isn't just about putting out information, but it's also about having conversations. It has a back and forth. It's about listening to people. So being able to have this overview of all your accounts at once is a great way to monitor conversations so that you can tell people on your board what's going on. Hey, they're talking about that development down on the corner. Hey, they're worried about the pedestrians being endangered down at that intersection where 3 people have nearly been run down, and so forth. Cross-posting is going to be the process of going from one platform to another to another. Now, the department used to use Hootsuite, and I stopped using it for actually posting from, because at that time, Hootsuite had just lost its ability to tag Facebook accounts because of changes to the privacy law on Facebook. Now, I'm not sure if it's still that way, and we are moving toward using another dashboard type tool for the department so that we can all share the monitoring of conversations and easily share material and oversight with each other. But a dashboard, even though it can have limitations, can still be a really easy tool to use for cross-posting, because you can just go from one side of your screen to the other and put everything up. If you want to do these things individually for each platform, which is what I like to do, I usually start with Instagram first, because Instagram allows me to research hashtags, and I like to do that version of the post first, and then I paste it, copy and paste it, and then I go to Facebook, and I take the Facebook version and I put that on Nextdoor as well, and those are almost identical for the most part, except Nextdoor needs to have a subject line on it. And then finally, I take that whole giant thing And I put it in Twitter, and I keep working on it until all the red space is gone and it fits into the character limit for Twitter. Now, I like to do that because it's easier for me to write long things than it is to write short things, but you may find a different flow works for you. But if you can kind of find a way to repurpose your content across each platform, it's really helpful. Here's another quick tip for formatting, and this is another reason why I like to start with Instagram first. On Instagram, you'll notice that sometimes when you put in a lot of text, it all starts running together. All the paragraphs run into each other. What you can do to separate a line of space in between each one is right after the end of the sentence, right at the end of the last word in the top paragraph, do not hit a space, hit return, put a period, don't put a space, hit return again, and then that will put that dot in a line of its own, and it will create the illusion of line breaks in your post. Similarly, if you're doing an Instagram post and you want to use hashtags, you can do a dot, a dot, a dot, a dot to do several lines of space between your actual post content and the hashtags so that they're still included by the algorithm as part of your post, and they still draw traffic to your post, but they don't make your post look too junky or too messy. One more tip for hashtags on Instagram is that if you use the search tool, either on the mobile platform or on the desktop version, you can search for hashtags and see how popular they are, and you can even discover hashtags this way. That's one of the things that makes Instagram one of my favorite platforms, because it's great for SEO, search engine optimization, which is essentially a process of making your content findable online by people who are interested in what you're talking about, but who have never heard of you and have never seen your account before. So for example, if you go to Instagram in the search bar, and you want to do a post about renters' rights, for example, or help for renters impacted by COVID, if you go to the search bar and you put renters in it, you'll start seeing hashtags come up that contain that word. And you'll also see a number next to them that shows how many people have been using that hashtag. So it's a great way to choose things that are the most popular hashtags to use for your post. Now, most popular comes with a caveat. You do not want to choose hashtags that have millions of hits, because your content will be lost in a sea of other content. You want to use ones that maybe have like 3 to 5 digit counts, ideally, for most of them, because that's the sweet spot between there being enough people interested for this to be a searchable thing, but not so many people that your post will just disappear under a sea of other content. So like hashtag Los Angeles, that's a really hard one to use because it has millions of results. But hashtag, San Pedro, hashtag Wilmington, hashtag Boyle Heights, those are great hashtags because those are tied in closely to the neighborhood that you represent. People looking for things in your community will discover you that way if they haven't seen you already. Good hashtags actually got us our best engagement rate ever, where we had about 36% engagement rate for one of our posts about rent relief because of the hashtags that we used on Instagram. You can also use hashtags on Facebook as well, by the way, and on Twitter. So let's talk for a moment about managing interactions. There's a few considerations for board members who are using social media. One of them is the Brown Act. All of you have had training on the Brown Act, but you may not be aware that serial communications can actually happen on social media when board members comment on the same thread. if you get enough board members commenting on the same thread, then you could be in trouble in the same way that a serial communication could happen in an email or any other format. Serial communications are a dynamic. They're not tied to a specific type of platform. So please be aware if you're commenting on posts by your neighborhood council that that could be an issue. You don't want to trigger that. A huge piece for all of us that work in government has happened to me. I know it's happened to a lot of you, and it's something many of you asked me about, is managing negative people and managing negative comments. Now, I apologize because I was using a template to lay out this slideshow, and this part about visualizing the people who will turn to you for solutions that's down here under the negative comment part. That was not intended to be there. That was part of the template. However, in an odd way, it's actually oddly fitting, because I have found that sometimes there is a particular kind of negative commenter who really is sort of shopping for a solution, even though they're not very nice about how they ask about it. Now, first of all, generally speaking, many of the people who make negative comments on government accounts like NC accounts, they're not mad at you, they're mad at the system. They're mad at the man. They're mad at the people in power in this very generic, symbolic way. So I know it's difficult to say, don't take it to heart, because I always feel personally hurt or offended if somebody says something critical, even though I know that they're just really trying to get at the city, or they're trying to express their opinion about government in general, and they've just chosen the account that I'm the admin on as their particular target for the day. But a lot of people that make negative comments, they actually are making them. There's a certain kind of watchdog type of person who makes fairly negative comments often online because they care. I like to call that person a credler. A credler is a cross between a critic and a meddler. They're going to be critical, and they're going to be a bit of a busybody about it. But the reason why they're needling you is because they care about the issue at hand, or they care about the community. So with that kind of person, even though often they do not put their comments very well, if there's a grain of truth in what they say, if you reply, acknowledge it, but talk to them as if they had made that statement in the most supportive possible way. So if they say, hey, dummy, you got the date wrong, you know, you can reply something like, oh, thank you so much for catching that. You're correct. The 29th is a Thursday. It is not a Friday. Or, hey, dummy, you made the slide wrong. Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you for catching that. That comment at the bottom was part of the template, and it should not have been there. Now, it can be hard to sort of swallow. I feel challenged when someone makes that kind of comment. So it can be a little hard to swallow that and to comment back in this outwardly polite way when somebody has not been very nice to you. But I have found in practice that that kind of a response has converted more mean people than almost anything else, because the watchdog type of critic is somebody who's motivated by caring underneath, even though they're crusty on the outside. So they might be very immature about the way they pursue what they want, but because their pessimism is founded on the belief that government is always bureaucratic and unresponsive, getting a response, especially a polite one, can really change their mind. And it can also create a good impression with your other followers, who probably also may think government is unresponsive, although they may not be saying so in that kind of a way. Now, another thing that can help if you do choose to respond to somebody that's being negative is to ask the person to put themselves on the line. Invite the mean person to a meeting. Tell them to come share their opinion there, as that is the place where their comments can actually become part of the official discussion on this matter and help shape the neighborhood council's position on it. Often a person who is really a bully is more comfortable operating from the shadows. So this tactic encourages them to either step up or shut up. Finally, you can also offer education in a nice way. You can share a link and say, if you're interested in learning more about this issue, here you go. Here's a web page where you can follow up on that, or here's an event that you can come to where you can learn more. Now, please keep in mind, you are never required to respond to that kind of a negative comment. However, as I mentioned earlier in this discussion about the social media policy, you may also not be able to prevent, delete, or hide negative comments on a neighborhood council account. So if you do get a negative comment and you're not sure how to manage it, we are here for you. Don't hesitate to write to your NEA so they can help you decide if the city attorney should be involved if you're having that kind of issue. We are glad to help. And please just keep in mind that even when we say don't reply to people, we don't mean that we're discounting how you feel about this. You are always welcome to say, I didn't reply, but I need to tell someone how I feel. We don't want you to feel unsupported, and we don't want you to feel alone facing that kind of issue. Here's a couple of tips for the different specific platforms that most neighborhood councils use. Now, for Facebook, like I said, we do have help for your lost logins through the Information Technology Agency. So please, if you have lost a login to your Facebook page, let us know. You can send that to your NEA directly if you've lost your page, or you can send it to feedback@empowerla.org so that we can assist you. Here's another tip for Facebook. Invite Empower LA to be a co-host on events to help increase your bandwidth. Now, it's fine if it's an event that really only is meaningful for people within your neighborhood, but it's even better if it's something that's going to be of interest to people across the city. The virtual environment has had a lot of disadvantages, but one of the cool things is that a lot more of us, I know that I have been able to make it to events. So don't be shy, set up an event, send us a co-host invite. Our account is facebook.com/empowerla. Send us a co-host invite, and that way it'll crop up on our event list. And then as we start building more NC events there, we can start directing the public on our own channels to look there for events that are being hosted by neighborhood councils around the city. Another tip is to use the business manager if you don't want to publicly tie your personal account to Facebook as the administrator. Now, Facebook is unusual among these accounts because it requires you to have a personal profile in order to be an administrator. It isn't correct to use what's called a gray account, which is a personal profile type account that's actually a fake person. Like we used to have one called Eula or something like that, that was sort of like a version of Empower LA, but not really. So that kind of thing has been pursued by Facebook. They've been shutting down those kinds of fake accounts that people have been using to shield themselves from public view as the administrator of a Facebook page. The business manager dashboard is the way to go if you need to do that kind of administration and you don't want to tie your personal account to the Facebook page. We can talk more about using that tool in your one-on-one strategy session if you'd like to go that route. And it's also something that we'll address with more specific steps that we share with everyone as the social media policy comes to fruition. Twitter has a new image size. I will include that in the material that I'm sharing with you because it's so new that it hasn't really, templates really haven't been created for it yet, and it messed up a couple of my posts. So I will share that information with you so it does not mess up yours. Here's another tip for Twitter. If you'll notice, when you upload an image to the cover image portion of your account, often it looks really grainy and low res, even though it was a very nice high res image before. What you can do is save that image with 1% transparency. That's something that you can do in Canva, for example, and that for some reason messes up the algorithm that crunches down the file size, and your image will look lovely. Finally, there's also an ability to limit who can interact with you on Twitter. So again, if that's something that you would like to consider, that's something that we can talk about at your strategy session. For Instagram, you only have one place to put a link in bio. And in Instagram, it's very common to see people's posts say link in bio, but with only one link, what can you do if you have 3 different events you want to promote, your neighborhood council website, and everything else? What you can do there is something that you've probably seen on Instagram that other people are using. It's called a link service. Linktree is a really popular one, but there are many other services like it. A link service allows you to use that link to open up a whole set of links. Just make sure that you choose one that allows you to brand it with your neighborhood council colors, your logo, your information, so that it matches your own branding for the council and that you help build trust with your audience that way. But if you have several things that you're promoting at once, that's a great way to manage it so that everything is clickable on your Instagram account. Finally, Nextdoor. Every neighborhood council has a Nextdoor account, but many of you are not yet using yours. Each neighborhood council is able to share the same account, so please ask us to be added. If you don't yet have access to your account, you can write to nextdoor@empowerla.org to get your account login. We can add up to 3 people as administrators per neighborhood council. Another thing that I'd like to ask you about, if you do use Nextdoor or you do wind up getting access to your account and starting to use it, check your boundary map, please. I've had a few different neighborhood councils say that their boundaries were incorrect. This is a pretty intensive process to fix with Nextdoor, but it's totally possible to do it. But what I'd like to do, because we need help from the Bureau of Engineering and the City Clerk's Office, to get the what's called shape files, which are the mapping files that determine where your boundary outlines are. We'd like to be able to make sure that we know everyone whose boundaries are incorrect so that we can process these things as a batch, and that way we can get everyone helped more quickly. So please, if you're on Nextdoor already, if you get access after this webinar, please check out that map and see if it matches your boundaries. I've got a few neighborhood councils for whom it does not, and you've already kindly let me know and I appreciate it, but if yours doesn't match, please tell me. Finally, another tip for Nextdoor is that timing and subject lines matter. Subject lines are all people will see if your post goes into what Nextdoor calls a digest, which is what some people's view is set to view a digest. It's just headlines for the post. So if it just says board meeting at 6, people may not know that you have this fabulous hot topic on the agenda. They would actually have to have clicked through and opened it to find out. Put the hot topic in the subject line. Put the date in the subject line as well. Use a short format like 10/29, because the thing with Nextdoor is that timing matters. Unlike these other social media platforms where your post goes up and then it's gone pretty quickly, Nextdoor stuff has legs. I'm still getting people liking my post about parking enforcement changing that was made over a month ago. It's been accruing interactions this entire time. Every day it gets more interactions. And so Nextdoor is a great place to share things that are evergreen. And if you are sharing things that are time sensitive on Nextdoor, please make sure to try and post as early as possible, much earlier than you would for some of the other social platforms. It's not to say that you shouldn't ever send something like a reminder that way, but do try to do your original post at least a week before if you can. 3 days is probably the closest that I would get to the end. A couple of tools for hard to reach audiences. Everydoor direct mail is about 19 cents a piece. This is the US Postal Service's marketing tool. There are strict guidelines for how the postage needs to be part of the artwork and the size of artwork that they can take. There's also strategies to consider for deciding which of your stakeholders to reach, because bulk mail can become very expensive. And so probably the best approach to this, if it's something that you haven't done before, but which you'd like to try out for the election promotion, for example, is to talk to us about it in your one-on-one strategy session. I did outreach for a neighborhood council that was in exhaustive efforts and had no other way to promote elections except by spending the elections budget on a direct mailer to local residents. With about $6,000, we were able to cover most of the addresses in the council with a call for candidates in English and Spanish. That one piece of mail got about 27 candidates for the election. So it can really be powerful if you use it right. And it's also a great tool to reach audiences that are hard to reach with normal digital means. Seniors, for example, are one group that's easier to reach with direct mail because they may not be on social media. Renters as well, who are back behind gates, and renters or people that are in condos or other multi-unit buildings, direct mail can be a great way to reach them. Now, for renters, one other tip, because I had a few of you ask about reaching renters, is to cruise by a larger building and get the phone number off the front and call management, or look at the address, find their website and send them an email and just say, I'd like to be able to promote our elections or our event with the people that live in your building. Introduce yourself, explain that you're from the neighborhood council and what you do, and see if they can give you permission to find a way to safely social distance and yet provide some promos to the people in that building. Maybe they would let you mail them a flyer for their bulletin board or something like that, for example. So try to partner with the manager if you can. If you see the manager's doorbell listed on the list at the buzzers at the gate, ring it, see if they're home, ask them. Text messaging campaigns, also known as SMS marketing, are also really helpful ways to reach people that are not digital. Now, I think that probably all of you are very familiar with text message campaigns by now because of all the election outreach that you're getting. And I apologize because I was unable to set up the demo for this particular webinar in time using the phone numbers that you gave me because I had trouble recovering the login for the tool that we use. We use a tool called Simple Texting. Simpletexting.com is their website, but there are quite a few other SMS marketing tools. You may even want to find out what other, what candidates are using this season, for example. But since you're very familiar with that kind of content, consider these kinds of things. Politeness matters when you're reaching out to people via text message. Explain who you are. Don't just use their first name without explaining who you are. I've personally found that a little bit alarming and almost invasive. It's like somebody sliding into your direct messages, and who is this person and what do they want? So introduce yourself when you're sending a text message campaign and offer things that are helpful. What I will try to do is set up a demo when I send out your packet so that I will also text those of you who did include your phone number with your registration a copy of the packet so that you can see how the tool works and how to interact with it. And if you like it, we can talk about how you can deploy that kind of tool for your elections outreach strategy when we get to your one-on-one strategy session. Finally, relationships are key. Working through trusted sources is the #1 way to engage people. I've been reading a lot of content about how the national campaigns for the presidency, for Congress, for Senate, US Senate are turning toward other tools because knocking on doors is something that you can't really do during this era of social distancing. So one thing that really seems to be working is for people to, through text messages, through other kinds of outreach, ask people to share your information with people that they care about. Make it a very small ask. Just say, can you share this with 2 other people? Ask your board members, ask your committee members. Your board members say, can you share our election outreach with 10 other people that you think would vote? Always include the area of town that you serve, because maybe somebody doesn't live in your area, but maybe they know someone else who does. I always find that a big flaw in a lot of the elections advertising that I'm seeing on television, for example, is that it's advertising some mystery candidate that's running for a seat in an area that I'm not in. Otherwise, I would recognize their name. But if I only knew what seat they were running for and where that seat is located, I might find them intriguing enough to tell my friends in Orange County to vote for them if I knew where they were. So always keep that in mind. complete information, and ask people to utilize their relationships, their personal relationships, in this small way to champion your cause and your content. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is, again, the email list for how you can get help with different issues. I'm going to go ahead and take some questions from folks.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. So if you guys could give her a virtual thumbs up, that would be fantastic. So I'm going to loop in Jose Galdamez from our team to help moderate the questions. Okay, so Jose, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. So, and then just for a quick time check, we know it's 6:30 already. So Anne-Marie's been gracious to stay here until 7. We do have 7 o'clock, a purposeful aging workshop, just to be mindful of that as well. So Jose, want to just give us the guidance?
Hi, good evening, everybody. For those who would like to ask some questions to Anne-Marie, in order to do so, you can do so by pressing the participants button that's located on your window, and then it'll open up on the side. Right at the bottom, it'll show raise hand button. Just make sure to click on that, and that will notify us that you would like to speak. And I'll be calling everybody on the order that they raised their hands on. So first off, we have Liana. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the tips. Very useful. I think my primary concern is kind of broad about, initially you're talking about what neighborhood councils can share and strategies for types of posts, but that seems to go counter to at least the way that my neighborhood council is reading the proposed social media policy. You talk about doing things that we want to do, like highlighting community members, businesses, events that are happening. But our reading of the social media policy is that it's for official events only, official neighborhood council business. So it seems to run counter to the way that we at least are interpreting the policy.
Well, other department staff, please feel free to jump in on this one. But first of all, currently the policy is not yet in place. So until it is finalized, it will not replace anything that you can do right now. But do be aware that some of these guidelines are going to shift and change as the policy comes to fruition. Now, that being said, though, one thing you have to be careful of is promoting local businesses. You can't really advertise for somebody who's in a business, but if somebody who lives in your neighborhood was recognized by the assembly member for turning 100 years old or something like that, that's the kind of shout out that I mean. But as much as important as it is to support local businesses, you can encourage people to shop locally, but promoting an individual business is generally considered off the table even now before that policy comes into view. Raquel, do you have anything to add, or Tom?
To the specific question associated with what seems to be counter to in the policy, I would right now it's in a process period. It's not finalized. People should share their perspectives. It could be that it's written in a way that suggests something that isn't intended by the policy. It's out for distribution. It's out for comment. So we just want you to tell us what you think. What we've done is prepared something that is very comprehensive. It touches upon basically all aspects of this issue based on our research of what are considered to be best practices, particularly with government institutions. They are different. It's different than if it's a business practice or a personal practice. But what's important is that it's out for distribution, it's out for comment. So if that's how it strikes you, that's what we want to hear. We want you to tell us that that's how it strikes you. And that'll allow the commission to take that into consideration and work with us to find a better way. What we'll be doing in the workshops is giving you a better sense of what's happening in the neighborhood council system. So you're at a disadvantage for not knowing some of the problems that we were trying to address in the draft policy. So the workshops that Anne-Marie referenced, in those workshops, we're going to share more with you about some of the problems that neighborhood council leaders are truly experiencing, for which we don't have a resolution right now. And the policy was one step toward being responsive to what people are asking of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liana. Hey, Tony, I see that Tony has got a question.
Go ahead, Tony.
Well, yes, it actually, and would welcome comments on it too.
Mhm.
It strikes me that, well, then in the old days, back in 1960, I think, there's a book called Management by Walking Around. And it basically said, get out of your office for managers and go down to the factory floor and see what the heck is going on. And I think I've always said it's still effective today, that when we can walk in the community, that's what we do. And we need every board member to go out, wander around through the community and say, hi, I'm Judy and I'm from the neighborhood council. But the more people see you, the more they know about us. This is true on social media. This is true in online meetings. For example, in schools, you have virtual coffees with the principal. That's a great place to go if you have an interest in education or youth issues. So I'm urging everybody to do management by walking around. And the way it relates to the social media is, I think that some of the social media policy is, as perhaps the general manager suggested, written in a way which is typically an attorney way, which may overreach the actual intent. It's one thing to be a city council person representing 250,000 people and obviously hugely visible and a true public figure. Now, we may become public figures, but frankly, just being on a neighborhood council board by itself doesn't make you a public figure. But still, I think a good practice, and this is in person, but it's also social media, is just keep the neighborhood council official relationship out of the issue. You can say I'm part of the neighborhood council. You can say the council's meeting on such and such a date. You could say, then, my opinion, or I'm only here with, engaging on my opinion, but you may have a different opinion. You should go to the council and make a public comment. As long as you're doing this kind of thing that separates you from your official role, I think that makes us a lot freer because we're being very clear with the public. Now, I think the other thing is going to be that if it comes down to very narrow issues, yes, and no matter what we say as a disclaimer, if we have too many board members in the same social media on the same issue, we still have a Brown Act problem. So I think what's going to happen, to tell you the truth, as long as the city's pushing this, is that bigger, broader issues are not going to come to the council anymore. We're not going to see community impact statements on macro views of homelessness. I mean, we may comment on a specific rule that's a council file on just this way to deal with one aspect of homelessness. But in general, I think the neighborhood councils are going to get forced into being more of a big tent discussion forum for issues which we all agree are actually not going to come to the board. And that's the way we're going to get around these rules. So basically, you're going to change the nature of what neighborhood councils do, and it may be for the better. Thanks.
One point that the book you mentioned brought to mind, Tony, I'm familiar with, but have not read Management by Walking Around, but I am familiar with the principles that it suggests, which is essentially, as you said, that you show leadership by having a presence that is routine, that is everyday, that is pervasive. So no matter what happens with this social media policy, I do want to point out that I don't know if that will really change as something that is necessary to continue to do online. As you said, it's not just by walking around, but it's by having a presence at these digital things. So creating these forums that are more casual, where people can sit down in smaller groups and get to know each other, by replying whenever you can to your social media followers who like things. If you see that somebody shares your post, go and like take a moment to put a heart on it and thank them for sharing your news, for example. That's really huge. I love it when people tell me that, you know, and I try, and because of that, I try and do the same for other people. But that kind of like everyday interaction really adds up. And I've had people tell me even after months, hey, I saw that you replied to that person that was being mean, for example, on this post, and it, you know, and it made an impression on them. So I understand your concerns about the policy, but I just want to say that I absolutely agree that it's true that you can accomplish this walking around type leadership, transition it successfully to digital means. And I think that those small everyday interactions are one of the really important ways to do it. They really add up to something big.
And I don't want my comment on the social media policy to be the overwhelming point, because actually what I wanted to do was to lift up and say absolutely what you're saying to all of us about social media, about interacting positively, sometimes even when it's difficult. I know myself, if somebody hearts my comment on the social media or YouTube or whatever, I feel really great about it. And so I like to return favors and like other comments. And this is part of building a relationship online. So I wanted basically to support everything you were saying, and then just have an asterisk that depending on how this rolls out, we shouldn't stop doing what Anna Marie is telling us to do, just what you said, but we may have to look at it differently, and we should always be as separate as possible. We should never show up and say, hi, I'm from the neighborhood council. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Tony. Renee, would you like to ask a question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes,
Okay,
I can.
great. Hi, thanks so much. My name is Renee. I'm representing Highland Park. My question is about the text message campaigns. Maybe you have it in the draft, which I haven't reviewed yet, but I know, you know, typically you have to opt in for something like that. And I'm curious, like typically when I've done that personally, it's been like a Google form or some type of survey. Is there any stipulations around using like that, or what's an example of a successful text campaign, like in terms of gathering somebody's phone number?
Definitely you want to ensure that you have the opt-in and that the person is clear on what they're going to be receiving from you. Without the opt-in, it's probably best to not use it. Although if you're looking at a specific source for obtaining information or using it a certain way, I believe that the city attorney's advice division can probably give you more specific details than I can on that. What I like to use text message campaigns for is for following up with people on specific issues. It's a great way to remind people about meetings. I have some hesitations about using it in the way that one would use a cold call. Frankly, contacting somebody who's never met me before, I want to make sure that they are, I see Tony's making a thumbs down. It can feel invasive if you don't do it right, but then sometimes somebody has something really wonderful. I got a message from a candidate I didn't know who said, what do you need? People are having a hard time right now. And I was very struck by the generosity of that. So I felt okay getting that from a stranger. But what I like to do for text message campaigns is use them to share agendas. Typically when I teach a class like this, I like to use them to share the class packet, because then people can go back and forth while we're talking, and it gives them an enriched experience and they're not tied to this one specific screen. For example, what you can do about it for meetings is you can let people know that if they're at your board meeting and they want to receive a reminder about future agendas or get a text message about it with the link, you can do that. And you can even organize lists for specific issues. If somebody's interested in following one particular case through its trajectory on your NC, you can do that too. If you'd like, Renee, if you'd like to talk more about that when we sit down for your one-on-one session about the kinds of audiences you have and maybe the different kinds of opportunities that you might have to use it, given what your stakeholdership groups are like, I would be really glad to do that.
If I may add, I think the key comment that was made was, if you're going to be building a database, you do want people to give you permission to use their contact information. So that can be in text messaging as well. And it's an important thing to do. It's if nothing else, it's a basic courtesy to do that and to let people know how their information will be used. And then having some good protocols on your neighborhood council where you have some understanding of what safeguards you will be approving, and even as part of your standing rules, so that there's an understanding by your board about how you're going to protect that information based on the permission that people have given to you. It's an asset, and it takes a lot to get someone to agree to share their information. So having some kind of process on your board where you agreed on how you're going to protect that asset is a basic point of respect, I think, for the people that you want to serve.
Absolutely. That respect is key. That's part of that goes back to what we talked about toward the end of the class, which is that it's relationships drive outreach, drive successful outreach. So you want people to feel like they can trust you. They can trust you with their information, since you seem to have it, you know, that they know what you're going to do with it and they know what to expect from you. So thank you very much for bringing that up. That's an important point.
I think we have Joy Enix from President of EC Southwest.
Fabulous. Joy, would you like to ask a question?
Can I just remind everybody first, like, if you're not sure how to raise your hand, again, it's going to be available through the participants button. So you need to open up the window for participants, and at the bottom we'll have a raise hand button where you can click in order to make comments or questions. And those for that called in, that'll be *9. Okay, sorry that Joy, go ahead and mute.
Hi, I was just wondering if there's going to be any kind of directive or advice on who we're allowed to follow on social media. That's it.
Thanks.
That's something that I'm actually not sure of. I don't, Raquel. I think that there would be
I don't think that we, in the drafting of the policy, at least, I don't know that we spoke to that. I don't think the policy speaks to that issue because we didn't necessarily think about that. That's an interesting consideration. If that's something that we should think about, be happy to give it attention.
I do think that one stipulation will be that there will probably be something in the policy about contextualization that they'll recommend that neighborhood councils put in their bio or on their About Us portion of their social media accounts, saying something like a retweet does not equal endorsement, or, you know, a follow does not equal an endorsement of every perspective or of this candidate or something like that. You see that kind of language fairly standard on other kinds of government bodies and other kinds of public officials. So I believe that will probably be a recommendation that will come out as part of this policy as well. But that doesn't mean you can't follow them. It just means that you need to frame for your public what the following signifies or what it doesn't signify, if that makes sense. Thank you for asking that. I'll make sure to make a note.
Just do a quick time check. It's 6:52, and I see Tony's hand. But before Tony goes, I just want to give someone who has not spoken yet someone else an opportunity first. I see Tony nodding head. Okay, so are there any other raised hands? Any other comments? Okay, so then then we have Jennifer Goody from Mid-City Neighborhood Council. So Jose, you want to unmute, please?
Yeah, so this is actually, I was thinking hard about whether or not I wanted to say this because it's not a very happy statement. To me, it's really frustrating that there seems to be such a disconnect between what is taught here and what is in the draft digital media policy. And I realize that it's just a draft policy and it isn't put into place yet, but it makes me feel like not enough thought was put into the policy before it was pushed out to NCs, causing us, a lot of commotion and a lot of extra work and a lot of extra stress trying to figure out what we're going to do about this, having to make statements about it, having to issue CISs about it, having to go to a lot of meetings about it. And there's just a really large disconnect between that and what you're teaching here. And what you're teaching here is, good tips to build a engaged following and have useful social media accounts. And what is in that policy can severely hamstring anybody trying to do that. So I just want to voice my frustration.
Oh, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I don't want you to ever feel bad about making a critical but insightful comment during a meeting like this or any of our other webinars. I think it's important to be able to share and be frank. I do know that what will happen with the policy is that it will then be turned into best practices, and that sometimes the difference can really seem vivid between the legalese behind something and the plain language statement. Going back to what we said earlier in the webinar about plain language, it will be principally my job, but all these other wonderful people will hopefully help me out to develop a set of best practices that arises from where the policy finally lands. But the feedback that you're giving, that's important to shaping this policy. And I do really hope that you'll still be able to join us at the commission meeting in November or one of the other workshops to continue to bring this up. I did make a note about it, but just to give you one quick example, I did allude to the Brown Act and to serial meetings, but I did it pretty quickly and pretty casually. And I also talked about First Amendment issues relating to the policy pretty quickly and pretty casually. And yet those things, when you have to actually state them in legal terms, can be really elaborate and pretty difficult to get through. So we may actually wind up pretty close to where these I tried my best to only teach things that would be good advice for some time, regardless of what happens with this policy. But the difference between the legal underpinnings and the plain language version up top can sometimes look more divergent than it actually is.
Yeah, Emery, I think that Raquel has a comment regarding this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Raquel, please.
Oh, you don't have to apologize. I do also want to thank everyone for their comments and thank them for the future comments that we want you to provide us. I appreciate that that people might feel as though they're being asked to expend energy in an area that may seem like it came out of nowhere. And what I would offer is that this particular webinar today was designed to provide you the guidance that if you stay within what's being recommended here, you're probably in good shape. Where there's a disconnect, and a bigger disconnect, is the lack of understanding that all neighborhood councils have about what's really happening in the system, across the system. And it's so easy for us to kind of think about, if you may not be having the issues, you may be just fine in what you're doing. There are severe problems happening in the social media arena for some neighborhood councils, and in some circumstances it is we are under pressure as a department to do something to try to solve those problems, and they're border on being libelous, defamation, gross misrepresentations, a statement being made in social media that somebody is anti-Semitic when they never said anything, but it's about just making a statement like that when a person didn't say anything and there's no evidence of their saying something, but it's tied to the neighborhood council's work. So that's one example of what do we do? What do we say to protect the interests of that board member? Sometimes it's happening cross neighborhood councils, people on one board shooting at another people on another board on social media about what these different respective boards are making decisions around. In some cases, it's basically serial communication, violating the Brown Act through using communication on social media. So what Anne Marie has shared with you today, if boards were to stay within those sort of guidelines, those other things wouldn't be happening. But we find ourselves in a position of having to create a policy on the subject so that we stay within these safe zones and also protect the interest of board members who, when they having differing opinions, are finding themselves in a social media arena that is quite challenging. We've had people leave boards because of social media posts that they were afraid were going to cost them their jobs. So they're pretty egregious situations. It's possible that our intent in addressing those things through this policy may have been overreach. We're happy to get that feedback. We're happy to find the balance. This is a process. And I don't think that anybody could ever say anything in a process like this that we wouldn't welcome, particularly because we don't want it to be something that creates a problem somewhere else. What we've presented is great for people to digest, and we want you to stay in the conversation. I'm going to excuse myself because I've got to jump over to the other meeting to do the opening remarks. But I want to thank Anne Marie, first of all, and I'm not asking others to leave, but if you still have questions for her, she's making herself available. This was a great presentation, Anne Marie. We appreciate your work, and I'd like to certainly thank the other members of the Empower LA team for providing her the support. She's the only person we have in the department to try to do our work, support all the PIO work, and to support all of you. And the other members of the team really rallied around her to make this successful for all of you as neighborhood council leaders. And I really appreciate your time. We've covered a lot of material, and we're going to do our best to continue to provide you support as we move forward. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
All right, thank you, Raquel. I think, should we hear from Tony Emery? Or... Okay, Rick, Jose, if you can unmute.
Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, I just want to be real quick because I know we have aging coming up and it's the old man in the room. I want to go over there myself. But for Jennifer, I think that the general manager who's now gone could attest to this. If there's anybody who on the first thing says, my gosh, the sky is falling, it's Tony. That's always my first reaction. But in my experience with this department, if we do what Jennifer suggested, if we say, wait a minute, this doesn't look like it's going to work. I remember the department also has to deal with the naysayers like ITA for how to do a virtual meeting policy, never do anything and you won't get in trouble. With the attorneys on social media, well, if you don't say anything, you'll never get in trouble. So they're sometimes in between a rock and a hard place, but I've never found a case where if we speak up and say something isn't working, we don't get like an adjustment. Or so we are partners with the department. So after Tony says, that's terrible, then sits down, we can work it out. I think this is the way to approach the social media policy. I think we should all be positive, and thank you very much, Anne-Marie. You're fantastic.
Glad to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks so much, Tony.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Let's check and see.
Again, for those that have any questions, again, press the raise hand button. It's located under participants. For those that called in, that'll be *9. I don't see any hands being raised.
Okay.
All right.
If I could say a few quick, first of all, thank you, Anne-Marie. Then as Anne-Marie stated, that as we have elections coming up, first candidate filing opens in the Hollywood, Pico, Mid-City region on November the 13th. We are scheduling one-on-one outreach sessions with your NEAs. So keep that in mind. So we'll be circling back with you. But in the meantime, Jennifer and Leanna with Mid-City Neighborhood Council, definitely reach out to Karen Hernandez, your NEA. I know this because I work with the South LA Neighborhood Councils. So we'll definitely talk, okay? But just please reach out to your NEAs and reach out to myself and Anne-Marie. Just one quick reminder is that in terms of promoting the neighborhood councils, I sent out an email just reminding the board members if you could send to us a quick 5-minute video, and I'll resend the email again with some questions on highlighting your neighborhood council. The feedback we've been getting is that instead of highlighting ourselves, we want to highlight you, but we need your help. Help us help you. So please just do a little short video. We had that videographer. We had that workshop a couple of weeks last month. That videographer will take your video and we're going to put it into a bigger video that promotes the neighborhood council system. So I'll resend the questions that we'll be asking, and then if you could send that to us. Doesn't have to be fancy. Use your phone, but get it to us though. Okay. Other than that, see.
Oh, Tracy has raised her hand.
Okay, cool. Then
Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I had a question related to that content piece. I saw the request come in, and I tried to bring it up at an outreach meeting with my council, and the other members were like, no, we don't want to do that. So I don't know if there's a possibility to convince them they should do it or to talk about it, but I was kind of upset about that. So just bringing that up.
I think, yeah, it's optional, it's not mandatory. It's not like the ethics, code of conduct training, but it's just a way, if that's the conscience and the will of the board, then, so be it. I get you. Thank you so much, though, but then,
well, could Tracy make one if she wanted to?
Sure. I think
yeah, you could make one of your own still. If you would like, that would be cool if you have the time to do it.
I got a caller from 338.
Oh yes.
In a mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, this is Maria, friend of Reseda Neighborhood Council. I just wanted to say thank you to all. This information was greatly appreciated, and thanks again to everyone.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Tom and Jose and Freddie, for helping me get the tech together. I was not a good setter up of Zoom. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So this will be recorded. This is, we'll get the recordings out, but thank you so much. Okay. All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, you guys. Bye-bye.